Welcome to weekly tutorial number 9. Well, that means we're definitely getting towards the finishing line. That means the end is in sight. Nevertheless, so important that you follow the process, because you can put all the effort in the world you want, but if you're running in the wrong direction, you're not going to get to that finish line. Not the way you might want to. So, given that I can see not enough people turned up on the weekend, and given that I can see that not enough people have really been engaging with the online tutorials, I'm going to run through the process. That way it's there, it's documented, and you know exactly what it is I'm expecting of you in terms of that process. So let's start with section 1. Section 1 is going to start with your original CPS statement from the interim learning report, and you're going to reduce it down, if need be, to 2 to 3 sentences, okay? And you're going to just really focus in on the essence of what you thought you were going to do for whom and why, all right? The customer, the problem, and the solution, or the opportunity. Then I want you to think about the feedback that you're going to be working with. Now, so I appreciate, obviously, that roughly half of you didn't come along and present. So don't worry, it's not the end of the world. All the groups that did present received the same generic feedback, and that was, assume you have no financial capital to contribute to the development of your idea, and now look for sources of energy and coaction to support the further development of your idea. Okay? So in this first area, I want you to think about how you're going to develop this idea in the absence of financial capital and by looking for these additional sources. So, note the nature of the feedback received and consider the potential impact of this feedback on your initial assumptions, what you were thinking in the interim learning report. Ensure that you use the environmental interaction framework concepts, highlighting their usage to strengthen your observations. Then I want you to think about the energy sources and coactions that you're going to introduce, okay? Obviously, coactions quite often are the result of using energy, but they can be something separate to that as well, all right? So with direct reference to the concepts of energy and coactions, what forms of energy and coaction can be used to A, overcome the lack of financial capital, and B, increase the likelihood of creating and capturing the value associated with your idea? If needed, use if and highlight it, just like you would your concepts, to introduce hypothetical bridges that allow your thinking to move forward. And all we're saying there is if you're thinking, well, I'm really struggling here to think what is the energy I could use, well, ask yourself, well, in a perfect world, what would that look like? And then you can recreate that perfect world by bringing in that hypothetical bridge, all right? Just make it very clear to us that that's what you're attempting to do by using that if in a highlighted way. Once you bring in energy and coactions, it's definitely going to have some impact on the way that you have previously thought about value chains, value shops, and value networks. So, now, which value creation logics would you expect to use to create new value? So explain how you're going to create that value, and to capture new value. So again, explain how you think you would be capturing that. As a result of that, that has to have changed the nature of your operational environment. So, explain the impact of using the sources of energy and or coactions on the ecological factors available in your perceived operational environment as they relate to the process of new value creation, and explain the rebalancing of the ecological and selective factors in your perceived operational environment as they relate to the process of new value creation capture, now that you're more reliant on energy and coaction. Now, we're making the assumption that we've got past the thinking stage, so now if you were to step forward and you were to put this idea into place, where would you start? All right? So based on the resource profile that you have in your group and your intended process of value creation capture, and drawing on the EI framework concepts, what would be your initial strategic orientation? Are you a K generalist, an R specialist, what is it you're going to be? But most importantly, justify why you believe that would be the most logical thing for you to do. Now, importantly, and I know the feedback so far from Marcia is that some of the assignments that she's looked at, the interim learning reports, haven't really highlighted a CPS statement. So important that you do that, all right? So what is your CPS or COS statement, all right? It should be now revised because you're now drawing in this energy, all right? So draw on the key aspects of your thinking to make the case of why Emergy and Coactions has enabled you to reconfigure the process of value creation capture in ways that increases A, your group's ability to create the value described, and B, increase the compelling nature of why your assumed end user would want to use this product or service. And secondly, ensure you use the framework concepts, highlighting their usage, underline, bold, colour, whatever you want, to strengthen your argument. You should include another business model canvas. You could revise the other one if you still had that, but it's mostly easy to go back, and it really should have a greater emphasis now on Coactions, on Emergy, and on those compelling reasons why you think the end user would want to use this. Again, really looking for you to use these concepts in an integrated manner. So think about how the concepts you've used and also the concepts that you've previously used are variation, selection, retention, resource profile, human capital, legitimacy. Keep in mind how those concepts still relate to the arguments that you're making in the final learning report. So that's what we're looking for you to do in section 1. So if we were to move on to section 2, the focus of the primary question that you're going to be focusing on is this question. What have you learned about yourself and or your ability to be entrepreneurial during the semester? Okay? So there's a couple of different ways you can approach that. If you don't want to talk about being entrepreneurial, you can just simply talk about what you've learned about yourself, and you can stop at that point, right? As it relates to this semester. Maybe you liked the way the unit was structured. Maybe you didn't like the way the unit was structured. That would be fine. But you don't want to start off by simply saying, well, I didn't like the way the unit was structured, or I did like the way. What is that about you that you now recognize, right? I recognized as a result of not liking the unit that so that's something new about you. That would be where you would start, right? Or you could be thinking about this notion of your entrepreneurial self, or the challenge of working in a group to try and imagine the process of value creation. All of those things are a good context for you to work with in terms of your initial reflections on that question. And then you can ask yourself, when I think about that, what is it that I think is something new about me that I recognize? And that's where you want to start that process from. Your reflections, when they're submitted in section 2, each paragraph should look just like this, right? Your red or highlighted or bolded Y should be exactly like this. Still got a lot of students who are thinking, I didn't put the Y in. I had it, but I left it out. There's no reason to leave it out. If you leave it out, you're making it hard for me to know when you stopped to explore what you just said. When you leave the Y in, which is what you have to do, it's very obvious to me when you stopped. So you can imagine, as I'm assessing your work, if you've got 2 sentences and then you stop to ask why, then I'm looking at the 2 sentences and seeing the 3rd sentence exploring why you believe or feel what you just said in the previous 2 sentences. If you don't put the 2 whys in, then I'm left at the end of the 1st sentence asking myself, have you explored with the 2nd sentence the 1st sentence, which you never intended to do? But I can't know that if the why is not there, all right? So you're making it much easier for me, and you're making it much better for yourself in terms of how you've approached these questions by making sure that the why is actually in there. Now, it's really important that you remember that we're using the why because we want to go deeper, all right? That's the entire point. I love this. This is one of the past students in the unit who used to put his whys in like this. And I think it's a great way because it's sort of a reminder that every time you use the why, you're trying to get that vertical movement by asking yourself, why do I think or feel what I've just said, right, in the previous sentence? If you follow that process, everything will take care of itself. Now, importantly, as we lead into the submission time for the final learning report, there will be plenty of Zoom sessions. So there wasn't a lot of people who came along to them. There were some, but I think the people who did come along will have benefited from being there and asking their questions or listening to other questions being asked. So if you're unsure of the nature of the feedback that you receive from your assignment, obviously you can come in and have a chat about that. But if you're just trying to make sense of, are you following the process, drop into one of the Zoom sessions. They'll be happening for at least the week leading in, and maybe before that. Looking forward to chatting to you soon. Cheers.